Okay, hey everyone. So we're gonna start now talking about sampling. And so remember, kind of at the very beginning, we defined statistics as being this collecting, organizing, describing, graphing, and interpreting data. We're pretty much done talking about organizing. It'll pop up in a few different places throughout the semester. Um, but we're going to move on to collecting data for the rest of this section. And so, one way to collect data is to perform a census. And so, for this example, we're going to suppose that we're maybe interested in collecting some income data on graduates from SLU who maybe graduated within the past 3 years. So, they graduated somewhat recently. And so, if we were to perform a census, that would mean that we're going to obtain data on everyone in our population. Our population just refers to the group of units that we're interested in, so kind of like everyone. So in this case, our population is all graduates from SLU from the past 3 years. Okay, and so an advantage of this, you could kind of take a second to think about why this would be good and why there would be some disadvantages with this approach. And so for an advantage, the most obvious one is that we have data for everyone. So that's really good. We've collected this income data on every single recent graduate that we're interested in. A disadvantage, so there are a few. One is that that's going to take a lot of time. We didn't really talk about how we're going to get in touch with all these graduates, but probably by phone calls, emails, and then some aren't going to respond, so you have to follow up, and yada, yada, yada. The other big constraint, not so much in this example, but in others, could be money. So some of these censuses are really, really expensive. The US Census, which occurs every 10 years, and it's occurring in 2020, is extremely expensive because you have to hire all these census workers, you have to pay them. They're not volunteers, kind of going house to house to collect information on residents. And so the census can be expensive depending on what your population is. If it's everyone in the United States, that's a lot, that's a huge endeavor. And so the other approach that we could take to collecting some data is just to collect a sample. And so a sample is when we just obtain data on a subset of who we are interested in. This is going to have the opposite advantages and disadvantages as the census. And so an advantage is that we're going to save time because maybe we're only getting 100 graduates from the past 3 years instead of all, I guess it'd be about 1,800. And it could also potentially save money. The disadvantage is that we're going to need to make sure that our sample is representative of our population. And so we'll talk a little bit more later about what representative really means. And so there's a little kind of like graphic here that comes from our textbook. If we're thinking about each dot as representing like a graduate, all of the dots might represent all of the graduates. So this is like our population. If we surveyed each and every person, that would be a census. Or If we don't want to do that and we want to save some time and money, because I mean, we all value our time and money especially, and so we could just take a sample, and this sample we're just collecting information on 5 graduates, and that's it. So that saves us time, saves us money, but we want to make sure that the sample is representative. And so in the next video, we will start talking a little bit about how to do that. So how to collect a sample in a way to make sure that it's actually representative of our population.